So what we're going to talk today about is parameters, and you guys have said that you have used them before, but not necessarily in a whole fit of anger. So I've created 12 examples for you guys, and hopefully we'll get through as many of these as we can in about 50 minutes. And if you have any other questions afterwards, we can always run more sessions or things like that. So to start, let's get an understanding of what parameters are. Again, these are basically parameters are ways that you can give users control over the visualization. So instead of having constant values for visualization, you can then let your user decide what they want to see or interact with or things like that. So some examples of parameters might be user-controlled thresholds. You can allow them to do what-if analysis. So forecasting projections would be an example of that. Dynamic fields, axis titles, etc. And we'll go through an example of that. Filtering across different data sources. Top-N analysis. So in other words, you're allowing the user to specify how many they want to see in a top-N analysis. And there's two steps to creating a parameter. First, you have to create the parameter. And the second thing is you have to either use the parameter in a calculated field, a reference line, a set, or a filter. So just creating a parameter doesn't do anything. You actually have to use it, tell Tableau how to actually use it. So I'm going to flip over to Tableau now. And the first example I wanted to walk you through is a dynamic reference line. Oops. Let me go ahead and clear my screen here. And I'm going to delete all of my parameters. Yes, should have done that ahead of time. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is delete all of these fields because I didn't prepare my workbook like I thought I did. Yes, okay. So the first thing I want to do is, let's say that we want to look at sales by day. So I'm just going to right click and drag order date to the column shelf, and that brings up a little context menu. And I want to look at continuous dates, so I'm going to go down here and pick my green day field. I hit OK, and then I'm going to just drag sales to the rows. And we get this really interesting, not very useful line chart. But let's say that our organization went through a change, and maybe on a particular date, or maybe it's a user-defined date, we want to be able to divide up the visualization. So to do that, I'm going to create a parameter. So I go up to the little triangle next to dimensions and choose Create Parameter. And I'm going to call this just pick a date. Very, very simple. And then the parameter section is broken into a few parts. First, you have to pick the data type. So you have examples of float, integer, strings, booleans, dates, and date and time. For our example, we're going to look at just a date. And you'll notice it defaults to the current day. So I'm going to just go ahead and change that for now. So let's just say 2012, and yes, you can just type in there like that. And let's just say we want to pick January 1st of 2012, just as our starting default date. You can change the display format if you want, but for now I'll leave it for automatic. And you'll also notice that we get this section for allowable values. We can either allow the user to input anything, we could give them a list, or we could give them a range. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and choose all and hit OK. And down here on the bottom left-hand side, we now have this parameter called pick a date. So I'm going to right-click on that parameter and show it. And what you'll notice now is that we have a parameter up here. And if I change the date, so let me switch again. I don't know why it didn't stick with our default date there. That's kind of strange. So let's just pick January 1st, 2012. You'll see nothing actually happened. If I flip back over to my PowerPoint, step 2 is we have to either use this we have to use the parameter in either a calculation, a reference line, a set, or a filter. Okay, so let's go ahead and see if we can do it on a reference line. So I'm going to go over to my analytics pane, and I'm going to drag on a reference line. And I want to do it for my just the table for my day of order date. And one of the things you'll notice now is in my drop-down list, you'll see I have my list of parameters. So I now have my parameter called pick a day. And for my label, I'm just going to set that to none and maybe just make it like a dashed black line, something like that. And now we've got the visualization split up by this line. So if I change the date, let's say to February 9th, you'll see that this moves over. So this is just a great way for your users to maybe identify a significant date or something like that in the visualization. So we can then extend that. So we could, let me go ahead and put the reference line on this view as well. And the next thing we might want to do then is maybe we want to, let's just pick something in the middle here. Let's say that we want to, oops, it looks like I broke it, doesn't it? Okay, so let me delete this sheet, or clear this sheet. And I'm going to go back over here and duplicate this one. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to take this visualization and I want to split it up by two colors. So in other words, anything that's to the left of the reference line, I want to have as one color, and anything that's to the right of the reference line, I want to have as a different color. So again, you might want to do this just to make it more clear on where the split is. So to do that, so again, we have our parameter, but this time we need to create a calculation with that parameter. So I'm going to do create calculated field, and I'm going to say, I'm just going to name it is older than date chosen, something like that. And this is going to be a very simple calculation. So all I'm going to say is my pick a date less than or equal to my order date. And this is going to result in a Boolean calculation. So you'll see here I've got this is older than date has a little true false next to it, which means it's a Boolean calculation. And all this is doing is just checking yes or no, is it above or below that line. So I can drag that to the color shelf, and now you can see my visualization is split up into two parts, nice and neat. So if I change my date again, maybe back to December 6th for some reason, you'll see that the color moves along with it. December 5th, whatever you want to choose. Okay, so that's the second example, a reference date with a calculation. So let me delete that sheet. All right, so the next example we might want to look at is maybe a sales forecast. So let me do a new sheet. And an example here might be, let's say that we have product subcategories and we have sales. And we want to have a second measure that allows us to specify a forecast. So I could do that with a parameter. So again, I'm going to go up here to the triangle next to dimensions, click on that and choose create parameter. And I'm going to call this my sales forecast. Now a sales forecast is usually in percentage format, so I'm going to leave this as floating. And then maybe for this example, we want our display format to be maybe 0 decimals for percentages, something like that. Okay, and we could give our users a range. Maybe we want them to go from -1 to 1. So that, in other words, from negative 100% to 100%. And what this step size option does is this allows the user to click through the percentages. So let's say that we only want them to be able to choose every 5%. So I'll tick on step size and type in 0.05. Hit OK. And now we have a new parameter called sales forecast. So let's show that parameter. And you'll see now, because I chose that step size, you'll see that my sales forecast now, I can click on these arrows, or I can just drag this. So how can we use that then? Well, again, the second step is to use it either in a calculation, a reference line, a set. And let's go ahead and create a calculated field. And let's call this our sales forecast. And all we want to do here is we want to take our sum of sales and multiply that by 1 plus the sales forecast. Now we have to do 1 plus the sales forecast because if I choose 25% for my sales forecast, I want it to go up by 125%. Not if I multiply it by 25%, then that would actually reduce it. So I'm going to hit OK. And now I can take sales forecast and drag that onto my sales axis to get a shared axis view. And you'll notice that I now have two different measures. I'm going to go ahead and put measure names on color to make them a little more clear. So you can see that our sales forecast bar is 25% higher than our sales bar. So we can slide that over and you'll see that they continue to grow or shrink based on the value that we picked for our sales forecast. So let me go ahead and delete this sheet. Okay, So the next thing we might want to do is maybe we want to combine our previous view that has our reference date with our calculation with our sales forecast. So let's go ahead and create another new worksheet, and we'll start from scratch. Let's take order date and drag that to the rows, and let's just say we want to do it by day. And then let's take sales and drag that to the rows. And let's just make it, to make it visually a little bit nicer, let's just make it a running total calculation. So we have something like that. Now we're going to go ahead and show our parameter control for our date, and then show our parameter control for our sales forecast. And let's throw our reference line on there again. So I'm going to drag my reference line on, make it the minimum of my pick a date. I'm not going to bother showing the value. Make it a nice black line. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to have a second line that when it hits this reference line, it starts to use the forecast. So in other words, I might say that as of September the 14th of 2011, I'm projecting a 25% sales increase. So I should have a second line that branches off right here and starts going up by 25%. So to build that, we need to create another calculation. So we want to call this one I'll call this one sales projection because we already used the name sales forecast. And what I want to say here is I want to say if my pick a date is less than or equal to my order date, then just give me the sum of sales. Otherwise, give me the sum of sales times 1 plus the sales forecast. I think this is, yeah, there we go. End. So what this is saying is if my date is older than if my pick a date is older than my order date, give me the sum of sales. Otherwise, give me the sum of sales times the parameter. And it looks like I did something wrong, so I'm trying to mix aggregate and non-aggregate. Okay, so I need to get rid of my sums here. All right, so now that should be okay. And we hit OK. And now we have a new field called sales projection. So let's go ahead and again do a shared access view of this. And we need to go down here onto our measure value shelf and also change this one to a running total. And we could see that I did something wrong. So let's look at this again. So let's look at our sales projection. And we want to say if our sales is that, then do something else. Okay, so I messed up the calculation somehow. So this is when you open up a previous workbook and you double check to make sure you did it right. So bear with me for a second. I'm going to pull it up in Tableau 10. I did something wrong with the calculation. All right, so if I go to my sales forecast here, profit trend, so our calculation should look something like if order date is less than reference date, then profit. Oh, that's exactly what I did. Okay, so, and how are we doing this table calculation running? Okay, so I think it looks like I did do it right. All right, so does anybody see anything that looks wrong here? Anyone? I think I'm doing it right. All right, so it looks like, okay, so somebody left a comment here, order date less than pick date. Oh, maybe okay, thanks, Tim. So let me go in here to my sales projection, and I'm saying if, oh, I've got this backwards, thank you. So let me change this to order date is less than or equal to pick a date. Okay, there we go. All right, there we go. So now you can see we actually have two lines on here, and you can see the red one is just behind the blue one. But once they get to the reference line, they start to diverge. So now it goes up 25%, something like that, or 55%, or maybe we're projecting a sales decrease. So this is just a nice, neat way to use both a reference line parameter and a sales forecast to make a dynamic view for your users. So I could switch it to the 5th of January 2012, and you'll see the same thing applies. So that's a neat little option there. So let me delete that sheet, and let's call this one our sales trend. Okay, so the next one I want to show you is a way to do dynamic sorting. So the first thing I want to do here is let's just put product subcategory in the rows. We'll put sales in the columns. We'll put profit in the columns. And we'll put average discount in the columns. So notice at that time I right-clicked and dragged discount to the rows, pick average. Now what I want to do here is I want my users to be able to decide which one of these things they sort by. So they may want to sort by sales or profit or discount. So to do that, I'm going to create another parameter. Oops, not calculated field. I want to create a parameter. And we'll say, I'll just call this one sort by. In this case, we're going to do a string parameter. We're going to choose a list, and I'm going to give them three options: sales, profit, or discount. And those are obviously go with the names in the columns. I'm going to hit OK. Right-click on my parameter and show it, and I get a nice little drop-down. But you notice that this doesn't actually do anything because we haven't created a calculation to use it yet. So I'm going to click on my triangle, create a parameter. I'm sorry, not create a parameter. I want to create a calculated field. And I'm going to call this sort order. And this time what I want to do is I'm going to use a case statement. I'm going to say case, and then I could just drag my parameter into the calculation. When they pick sales, then I want to do sum of sales. When they choose profit, then I want to do sum of profit. And then I could just do else average discount. End. Okay, hit OK. And now we have a new field called sort order. And if I put that in the view, I don't have to put it in the view, but I just want to show you how this works. So when you see now I have profit chosen, so it matches exactly to my profit bar. And if I pick discount, it's going to switch and match my discount. If I pick sales, it's going to match my sales. Okay, great. So what I want to do now is I want to sort my product subcategories in descending order by my new field. So I called this one sort order and hit OK. And now I've given my users the option to dynamically sort the view. So now it's sorted by discount or profit or sales. Very good. Okay, so now another way you could extend this though is, let's say for example that you want profit and sales to be sorted in descending order like they are, but you want average discount to be sorted in ascending order. So when they pick discount, you want it to actually go in the opposite order. Well, that's a pretty easy fix. I can just come in here to edit my sort order field and just stick a negative in front of average discount. What that's going to do is it's actually still going to sort in descending order, but because I'm putting a negative, my least negative will be first. So now you can see profit will go and sales will both go in descending order, and it gives the user the appearance that average discount is in ascending order. So that's a neat little trick. Okay, now maybe we want to combine this view, so let's go ahead and let me add the sort here. And let's do descending by sort order. Okay, and this time we have our product names, and it looks like this is a slider. Let's go ahead and switch this to a drop compact list. Or you do notice you do have these options similar to filters, where you can just give the user some different the different look and feel to the parameters depending on the type that you like. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and let's say that we only want to look at the top n based on the parameter or the metric that was chosen. So to do that, I'm going to go to my product name and choose filter. And I'm going to choose use all here. And over on my top, I'm going to do by field. And within the parameter, so this shouldn't be calculation 1, this should be by sort order. We can click on this drop down and choose create a new parameter and create a parameter directly from here. And what you'll notice is Tableau automatically defaults this to an integer data type. So and it builds out a lot of the view for us. So let's say let's just call this our top n. And you'll see it defaults to 10. And the great thing about doing it this way is Tableau actually fills out most of it for you. So in this case, because we don't have step size checked, the user would just type in a number. And maybe we want the minimum value to be, maybe the least they could show would be 5, and the most they could show would be maybe 100, that's fine. And we'll just say OK. Hit OK again, and watch over here on the right-hand side because magically our parameter will start to appear. All right, and you'll notice our product name is now on the filter shelf, and I can just slide this over, and it lets the user kind of pick whatever they want. So in this case, we're looking at the top 18 by profit. And it looks like my order got switched around. There we go. I can switch this to sales, and you should now see the top 18 by sales. And I know it's the right number of records, because if I look down here on my status bar down here on the bottom left, you'll see it says 19 rows. That matches with the number that's in my parameter. Okay, so you'll notice here that Global Troy Executive Leather Low Back Tilter is number 1. If I switch this to discount, you'll see that I have a few that get no discount, so that one is now gone. So you can see that both we have the top N acting as a filter, and that's also using it based on our sort by that we had chosen earlier. Okay, so that covers the first few. Let me go through and see which one I have up here next. So we got dynamic sorting, top N and sort. Okay, so the next one I want to take you through is a dynamic dimension. So in this case, let's say that let's put sales on our columns. And maybe we want the user to be able to do something similar to this, where they take product subcategory and they say, you know what, I don't want product subcategory, I want product container. Or they want maybe order priority. Basically, we want the user to be able to select the field that is in the rows. So to do that, we're going to create a parameter, and I'm just going to call this one select a dimension. In this case, we're going to make it a string, make it a list, and we'll just enter some of the dimensions that we have in our view. So let's say we want customer name, and we want product subcategory, and maybe we want to use state, something like that. Let's just do 3 for now. And now we have a new field, a new parameter called select a dimension. And again, it's not doing anything because we haven't told Tableau what to do with it. We only did step 1. So what we need to do now is we need to create a calculated field that basically pulls back the correct dimension based on the one they select. So I'm just going to call this one dimension selected. And again, I'm going to use a case statement. You can use an if statement as well. And I'm going to say I'm going to do case selected dimension, when they pick customer name, then customer name. When product subcategory, then product subcategory, else, state. And you always have to close your case statement. And now we have a new dimension called dimension selected. I can drag that into the view. And now you'll notice as I pick my dimension from my parameter, my list changes. And I could then sort this. I could sort this by my sales field, for example. And I could also use this in conjunction with my top or bottom filter if I want, if my top end parameter. So lots and lots of ways that you can expand this. So we'll call this as a dynamic dimension. Okay. And the next one we want to do is we want to do a dynamic dimension and a dynamic measure. Okay, so we already created this one measure called sort by, right? We have this parameter called sort by. Maybe we want this to actually be reflected in our columns. So let me go ahead and close that, hide that, and let me duplicate this sheet. And let's go ahead and show my sort by parameter. Okay, so what we can do now is we do have a field that is returning the value for our sort by. If you remember, we created this one called sort order. The issue with this one is that this average discount has a negative in front of it. So we don't want to use that same, we need to fix that. So I'm just going to duplicate my sort order, edit that, and let's just call this one measure selected. And I'm just going to remove the negative in front of discount. Okay, so now I could take measure selected and put that in the columns. And you'll notice that my, based on my parameter now, it'll swap out the metric that's in the view. Okay, fantastic. So what we can do now is we could sort, we could choose to maybe just sort this instead of by sales, we could sort it by even our sort order, our previous field that we created. So now when they choose discount, you'll see that I get all of my negatives first, or I'm sorry, all of my no discount customers first. Or if I pick profit, I get my most profitable customers first. I could even then maybe incorporate my parameter for my top N. So we can now filter our dimension selected by our parameter. Hit OK. And maybe we want to just do the top 10. If I can get there just right. There we go, top 10 based on profit, or my top 10 based on discount, or based on sales, something like that. Okay, it looks like we've got a question. All right, no worries, Tim. Thank you for coming. All right, so this is a dynamic measure dimension and measure. Now, one of the neat things we could do now is what I don't like about this particular view is that our axis says measure selected. So we can create a calculation that just returns the value of the parameter. So in other words, I'd like this to say sales, for example, here instead of, so if I drag my sort by, you can see it says sales here. So now I can just hide my field labels and then just remove my title. I can't put the parameter in the title, unfortunately, the title of the axis. So we'll just leave it like that. But notice what happens now when I switch it to profit. I get a nice little, it changes nice and neat that I like. So, and then we could maybe hide the field labels for the rows. So it does, you can reuse the parameters in the rows and columns as well. Okay, next one. Okay, so this is a pretty fun one. This one we want to create a dynamic view. The idea here is to create, based on the dimension that they pick, we want to either draw a bar chart or a map. All right, so how would we do something like that? So let's start by, let's just create a new worksheet. Let's show our selected dimension parameter. And let's go ahead and put our dimensions selected in the rows. And let's just do sales just to make it a simple example. And maybe we'll just always sort our dimensions selected in descending order by sales. Okay, so now you can see if they pick product or customer name, I want to show a bar chart. But if they choose state, I'd like this to flip to a map. Okay, so what I could do is I can create a, I'm just going to simply drag my, I think I can drag my selected dimension. Nope. I need to go ahead and take, where is it, dimension selected, drag that to the filters. Nope, that's not right. We want to create a calculated field. And I want to say, let's just call this my dimension filter. And all I'm going to say here is select a dimension equals state. So yes or no, does it equal state? So in this particular, so now we have a new true-false filter called, I'm sorry, new true-false dimension called dimension filter. I'm going to drag that to the filters. And what I want is, if I want the true to be excluded here. So this is saying if they pick state, don't show it. So notice how it goes blank. But if I pick customer name, it comes back. Or if I pick product name, it comes back. I pick state, and it goes blank. Okay, so that's good so far. So let's call this our bar chart. And then let's create another, let's create another new sheet. And this time we want to just, we want to have a view by let's see, so we could put dimensions, let's just put state on the map, and let's put sales on the size. All right, so we're just sizing our, just sizing the circles on our map. And I want to put my same dimension filter here. Or actually, let me show my filter first. Select a dimension. Show. Okay, so when they pick state, this time I want it to be true. So I'm going to drag the dimension filter, choose true, hit OK. And now notice what happens when I pick customer name. This one now goes blank. So I pick product category is blank. I go over here to bar chart, and it's showing up. Switch this one to state, and it goes blank. Go over here to our map, and now it shows up. So let's call this one our map. Now, a neat thing you could do is you could put these together in a dashboard and make it give your users different views based on the dimension they pick. So we could, so let's go ahead and put let's start a new dashboard, and I'll just make it, a nice small one for you here. And what I want to do is I want to put both of these sheets in the dashboard. And I want them to be within, let's just stick the map there. And the trick here is to hide the titles. So you notice when I hide my title and I stick them both inside of a container. So let me stick this in a container. Put the map in the container. I'll put the other one in the container. Notice how it fills up the space. So now if I pick customer name, I see a bar chart. If I pick product subcategory, I see a bar chart. And I could even make this fit the entire view. And it should fill up the space. There we go. Customer name fills up the view. That's kind of neat looking, isn't it? And then I could pick state, and it flips over to a map. So this is a nice, neat way to give a dynamic, to make it where it's like a user-selected view, for example. So you could extend this to include a line chart even. If you had, maybe you want them to pick the dimension you want them to pick as order date or something like that, then you could have a third one in here that is also a line chart. So we'll call this one what did I call it over here? On my PowerPoint, I call this just our dynamic view. Hopefully that one's pretty interesting too. I like how it kind of swaps out. You can see my other sheet is still here. It's just really small, so you can't really even, your users wouldn't even notice it. Okay, so the next one is let's go ahead and look at some dynamic date ranges. So we're gonna now let's go ahead again. Let's pick order date and put that in the rows in the continuous days. And let's go ahead and stick sales in the rows. And just for sake of argument, I'm just going to make it a moving average just to smooth it out a little bit. Edit that calculation. And let's maybe make it a 30-day moving average. So I'm going to pick 29. And then since I have include current check, that means a 30-day moving average. Okay, so we've got something like that. So now what I want to do is I don't know where this came from, so let's delete that. What I want to do now is I want to give my users the option to pick a start date and an end date for the view. So I'm going to, this time I'm going to right click on order date and choose create parameter. So again, because I know the field I want to base it on, if I choose create parameter this way, Tableau will automatically pick the correct data type and all of those things for you already. Now in this example, it gives us a list, but I want to just go ahead and allow them to pick any date. And I'll call this our start date and hit OK. And now we have a new parameter called start date, so I'll show that. And then I'm just going to duplicate that and then edit it and give it the name end date. And then show that parameter control. Okay, so now maybe I want my users, so my user says, you know what, I want to start looking at this on, so this looks like it starts on January 1st. Maybe they want to start looking at it from February 1st of 2010 through January 31st of 2011. So maybe a whole year in that way. Okay, so notice that nothing has happened in our view because we haven't told Tableau what to do with these calculations. So we need to create a calculated field, and we'll call it our date filter. And what we're going to say here is we want to say order date is basically we want to do like a between statement. So we want to say order date is greater than or equal to our start date, and order date is less than or equal to our end date. That'll result, again, in a Boolean calculation. So we're just going to drag that to the filters and say true. And now you'll see that my first date on here is February 1st, and my last date is January 31st. So this is a nice dynamic way to allow the user to customize the visualization. So a neat thing you could do now is you could maybe even show these in the title. So you'll notice it just says sheet 11 now because Tableau just defaults to the sheet name. So I might want to say 30-day average sales from, and then I could insert my parameters into my titles. So my start date to my end date. Hit OK. And then you can see it says 30-day sales. You can see my title will update dynamically. So if I switch this back to February 1st, you'll see it goes February 1st, 2010 to 1/31/2011. So this is a great way to use date ranges use two parameters to set a date range. Okay, two more to get through here. Let's see. So this is a moving. Okay, so maybe the next example is let's say we want to do a user-defined moving average. So if we look at our calculation here, so I'm going to actually just drag this down into my measures, and I'm going to call it my moving average sales. And now if I edit this calculation, what Tableau is doing is it's saying, give me the sum of sales, do the window average, that this is what moving average means, of sales, and it's saying look backwards 29 days, and then stop when you get to the current day. So this is how it counts 30 days. Well, maybe we want our users to be able to specify this number of days to use for the moving average. So to do that, we could create another parameter, and let's just call this one the smoothing. And I'm going to make it an integer. And let's say, let's give the users a range. So maybe they can do anywhere from a 7-day moving average to a 90-day moving average. And we'll just give them a step size of 1. Okay. And now if I show this parameter, or let me go ahead and duplicate this sheet first. And then let's show this parameter control. And you'll see that now it says 7-day smoothing. And if I move this around, it's not doing anything. So what I need to do is I need to edit let's just duplicate this. And now let's edit this field. So I'm going to call this moving day average sales smoothing. That way I know that it's coming which field it's coming from. And in this case, what I want to do is I want to replace this 29 with my smoothing. However, what this is going to do is this is saying it's going from, because you notice how the number 7 is in my smoothing now, this would be from -7 to 0, which is actually an 8-day moving average. So in order for this to be a 7-day moving average, I then need to add 1. The reason I choose to do it this way is because I don't want my users to have to know that they need to offset their choice by 1 day. I want to do that for them. So in other words, if they pick 30 in the smoothing parameter, they should expect a 30-day moving average. So I don't want them to have to pick 29 just because of the way that Tableau works. So I'm going to do that additional day for them. So I'm going to hit OK. And now I'm going to take this moving average smoothing, and maybe let's just combine them onto the same axis. That'd be pretty cool. So we have one that is doing I think this one is doing a 30-day moving average if I edit this. Yeah, so the blue one is doing a 30-day moving average, and the orange one is our custom moving day average. So if I set this to 30, you'll see that they overlap each other perfectly. But maybe I want to compare a 30-day moving average to a 60-day moving average. And I could do something like that. And if I want this one on top, I'll just reorder them. So that's a really, really neat way to handle something like that. So I don't know why you'd want to do a 42-day moving average, but a common thing might be maybe we want to do a 21-day moving average. And this allows you to compare the different moving averages. So let's call this one our moving in days. All right. So the next one we want to get to is a dynamic scatter plot. So I'm going to create a new sheet. And this time, what I want to do is I want to create I'm going to create a couple of parameters. So the first, I'm going to basically allow my users to pick a couple of different measures. So I'm going to say choose x-axis. And here I'm going to say I'm going to make this a string to the list, and they could choose sales, maybe profit. What else do we have? Discount and order quantity. I think that's enough. Hit OK. And then what else do we have? Sales, shipping cost. Maybe we could have chosen shipping cost. Do I have order quantity? Quantity ordered new. Yeah, something like that. Okay, good. So let me move these up a little bit so I can see a little better. So we're going to show that parameter control. And you'll see we've got sales, profit, discount, and order quantity. But again, this isn't doing anything because we haven't told Tableau what to do with it. So I'm going to right-click on my parameter and choose Create Calculated Field. Notice this time I didn't go up to the triangle up here. You can do it whichever way you want. If you choose to do it based on, if you create the calculated field from the parameter, it just Tableau pre-populates that into the calculation for you. So I'm going to just call this one my x-axis. And I'm just going to do a simple case statement. When sales, then sum of sales. When profit, then sum, of profit. When discount, then average discount. Else order quantity new, and I think I need to wrap this in a sum. Or maybe we want to do the average order quantity, so let's do the average. End. Okay. And now we have a new measure called x-axis. I'm going to drop that onto my x-axis. And maybe I will go ahead and put my parameter to the left of that. So then I can rotate the label and then hide the field labels. Double click on my axis, remove the title from the axis, and now it actually does look like that belongs to the axis belongs, or that this does look like an axis title. So when I change it to profit, you'll see it's profit. Change it to discount, you see it switches to average discount. Okay, so now let's duplicate these fields. So let's duplicate our x-axis, and let's just rename this one to y-axis. And then let's duplicate our choose x-axis parameter, and let's just rename it to choose y-axis. All right, so now we have our, let's show that parameter, and I need to edit my y-axis to just say y-axis. Hit OK. All right, so now this one's discount, so let's switch this one to order quantity. Put our new y-axis measure onto the columns, and we get a scatter plot. And I can maybe put my choose y-axis there and hide the field labels and then remove the title. All right, so there we go. So now we can, maybe we want to, we have this other field called dimension selected, right? We had this selected dimension. Oops, I didn't want to do edit. This shows customer name, product, subcategory. Okay, maybe that's okay. So let's go ahead and show that parameter control. And maybe I want to show the detail based on this parameter. So I could take, if you remember, we created this calculation called dimension selected that basically returns the list of dimensions based on the parameter. So I'm just going to drag that to detail. And now you can see that I get a dot for every state, or I get a dot for every customer name, things like that. And now maybe I want to compare my discount to my profit by customer name. So very, very good. Something really, really simple like that. So this is a great way to create a dynamic scatter plot. So let's call this dynamic scatter plot. Okay. And the last one we want to do is filtering across data sources. So let's go ahead, and what I'm going to need to do for this one is I'm going to go ahead and go to a new worksheet. And I believe I have region in here, right? Yep, I do. And I have maybe product subcategory. And let's just look at sales by product subcategory. Where's my sales? Something very simple. Now I need to, I only have one data source in here, so I'm going to go ahead and add another data source. This time I'll do maybe my coffee chain. I think I have a coffee chain. Okay, and you'll notice this one says market. So I believe in, so let's call this our Superstore sales. And let's create a new sheet, and let's create a similar view. So we've got markets for coffee chain, and let's say for them we want to do maybe by let's say maybe type of product, or maybe the product itself. Yeah, there we go. And let's look at the sales of the product. Okay, so now what I want to do, I'm going to call this coffee chain sales. And what I want to do now is I want to create a, if you'll notice, when I drag market into the filters, I have central, east, south, and west. And in Superstore, when I drag region in, I have central, east, south, and west. Okay, so maybe we want to create a parameter that allows us to filter across these data sources. So I'm going to create not create calculated field. I want to create, so let me delete that. I want to create a parameter that is select a region. And in this case, what I want to do is I want to make it a string, and I'm going to, I can go down here to add from field, order Superstore sales, pick region, and notice how it pre-populates it. So in this example, what this would do, and when I show this, you'll see it only allows my user to pick one at a time. But I could also give my users the option to pick all. So let me edit my parameter. And I'm just going to make it look like it's a filter. Like we have an all option, I'm going to move that to the top. I'm going to go up here to all. Again, you'll see it's not doing anything. So I need to put a filter on, I need to create a calculation that filters this view based on the region selected. So I'm going to create a calculated field, and I'm just going to call it my region filter. And what I'm going to say is that my select a region is equal to my region, or select a region equals all. And I have to make sure I put it exactly the way that I entered it into my parameter. And this, again, this is going to result in a Boolean calculation. So let me show you how this works. I'm going to put region into the view just so you can see it. So let me put region in the columns. And I now have this region filter. I'm going to drag that to my filter shelf and choose true. Okay, doesn't look like anything happened. When I pick central, notice how it goes just to the central region. When I pick west, it goes just to the west region. When I pick all, it switches to all regions. So that's kind of what the option is doing when I include this or region equals all. That's just saying, is it equal to all? True. Okay, so let's return them all. So let's go ahead and take region back out. And now we can create we could also notice how the parameters can work across data sources. So I'm going to show the parameter control here. And basically I need to duplicate that, that calculation. So in this case, I'm going to call this one my market filter. And I'm going to say market equals select a region, or select a region equals all. Hit OK. And now we can put our market filter in the view, choose true. And notice if I put market up here into my columns, you'll see it's just now central or just south. Or if I pick all, it shows all markets. Okay, so now the beauty of this is I could throw these together into a dashboard. Let's just go ahead and make it a 800 by 600 again. And I could put Superstore sales here. I could put maybe coffee chain sales underneath of it, or maybe next to it, whichever your preference is. And now I have this nice parameter that I'll just move to the top. And let's go ahead and entire view. I picked entire view. There we go. And now you can see when I pick central, it filters both of them. I only have one parameter that's filtering 2 data sources. So we'll call this our cross data source filter.